Hello, this is Steven, and my strategy that I picked was found poems. This one was by far my favorite out of the entire strategies book, so I hope you come to find it to be as fun as I did. I love this strategy because you can really use it for any content area. I know some of the other strategies seem to lend themselves towards that, but this one has some really awesome examples that we can look at to show you that we truly can use this in any class. So let's get started. So what is found poetry? It's actually pretty simple, and it's just like the name kind of sounds like. Found poems take existing texts and refashion them, reorder them, and present them as poems. It is the literary equivalent of a collage. So we can use things like newspaper articles. This says we can use street signs, graffitis, speeches, letters, even other poems. But again, we're using one text to make our own new text. Again, we can look at articles, we can use a book, we can use a page out of a book, use a passage. Again, we can use a poem to make another poem, literally anything. So what we do is we highlight, circle, or remove words or phrases we want to use, and we make our own poem out of it. We'll look at it step by step, but it's really, really simple and really fun. So, you want to try it yourself? Here is our step-by-step guide. So first, we want to circle or list the strongest words in a passage. We want to pay attention to powerful verbs, significant nouns, and well-chosen adjectives. Really, what we should do is challenge our students to just look out for words that jump out to them or seem most important. So anything that seems to be interesting or, sort of the focus of the page, that's what we want to look for. With the next step, we want to, as much as possible, honor the author's original order of words. So, however the page reads, that's how we should sort of set up our lines. And, when we consider our line breaks, it should match more or less the structure of the page. We'll look at a couple of examples of what I mean by that. And we'll see one example is kind of hard to follow because it doesn't really honor the line breaks. But we'll look at another example that does a really good job at sort of going down the page, line by line, making an interesting poem. So if they were just listing words and kind of taking those words out of the text, if they rewrote the poem, they want to make sure that they do edit the poem for verb tense and then, write a final draft of this poem. And the final step, you do want to title your poem, and then after that, you have found your poem. This should be easier to see after we look at these examples. So let's move forward to our visual examples and look at these different types of found poems. So the first one we can see here, this one's actually called a Blackout Poem. I think these are pretty interesting because, again, you can see it was, a complete page of text, and now there's very little left onto this page. Let me read this one to you. Luke Perry calls Mr. Rogers' voicemail, not to add to the messages, but to listen to the voice. It's a really cool poem. I have no idea where this page came from, what book it was in, but the example is super cool. And we can see sort of line by line, we have our blocks, so it's relatively easy to follow, and then we know that with the last line, it's kind of connected with that line. So we see the but to listen to the voice is one line, even though it's not necessarily in order, but it's easy to follow because the rest is blocked out. Whereas on the middle example, it's kind of hard to follow because there's arrows everywhere, there's lines everywhere. However, they're still highlighting certain words, so we're getting our found poem through here. The last example, this one's really great because, we get different colors, so we can kind of see these are the different lines. And then there is sort of a flow to the way that the lines are highlighted. So versus the middle one where there are just lines everywhere, we have these nice bubbles to kind of trace the lines in the order that they're in. I do want to show you this strategy in practice, just in the sense of using this in a way that we could use for several subject areas. So this next piece, we can see right here, we're going to talk about Rene Descartes. Before we look at the example, I would recommend that you watch this video. It's just a very brief explanation of his philosophy. I'll talk about it right now just so you don't have to watch it, but I think if you watch it, it will help you understand the example a little better. Long story short, Descartes, he was a philosopher and a mathematician, and he eventually started to doubt the material world. Are these things around me actually real? But he comes with the conclusion, I think, therefore I am. So no matter what happens to be real, what happens to actually exist and have a material form, he is a thinking thing, so he knows that he at least is real in some way, shape, or form. So, we actually get a found poem. This is a found poem I found on Rene Descartes, his Discourse on Method and Related Writings. So this is completely nonfiction. This is a philosophical text, yet we have our found poem. Let me read it to you. Look at these things, formed by the change of light, color, sound. They are real, whether they exist. So we still have the same, it's almost the same subject that he's talking about in his work, where he's considering what is real, what isn't real. And we still get that through this found poem. So, whoever did this did a great job at focusing on those things that stood out and seemed to be important with the theme of the text. Talking about existence and what he actually sees. This is just a way to show you that this can be used for any type of, content area. Because again, this is philosophy. I would have liked Descartes a whole lot more in my college courses if I got to do something like this. So really, I highly encourage all of you to try using found poems in your classes, no matter what it is you teach, because it's super fun, and I think it's way more engaging than just reading a text and talking about it afterwards. So thank you for your time. I know this was incredibly late. I've been super busy. Teaching and coaching has taken up a lot of my life, and I have just not had the mental fortitude to sit down and do this. So I appreciate your patience and your grace that you have extended me, and I wish you all the best of luck beyond this semester and in your careers. And here are my sources. Again, thank you, and be well, and be awesome.